There are over 163 million orphans in the world today. Many of these children have been turned out onto the street by their parents due to widespread poverty and the inability to feed their entire family. They're vulnerable and in need of help. Without assistance, a large number are suspect to AIDS, HIV, trafficking, prostitution, and even slavery. Both Hands Foundation, a nonprofit organization based in Brentwood, Tennessee, is dedicated to ending this cycle by putting a child back in a family and to put him or her on the road to success and recovery. Founder J.T. Olson explains why he's so passionate about this organization.
The inspiration for Both Hands came as a result of a letter a friend of mine wrote to me. I was doing a fundraiser, and it was one of those fundraisers where it's a golf fundraiser where you mail letters out to people and you ask them to sponsor you while you golf. And I mailed a whole bunch of letters out to all my friends, and one of my friends mailed my letter back to me, and he had scribbled on it. He said, "JT, if you told me you were working on a widow's house, I might sponsor you, but you're just golfing. Nice cause, but not my money." And it kind of hurt a little bit when I first got it, but I called him the next day and we talked about it, and I laughed about it and everything. But the idea just never left me, because I thought, what a great idea. And for about 3 years, that idea just kind of sat with me. And whenever I saw a fundraiser, like something going on, I always asked myself, I wonder if they're working on a widow's house and the people were sponsored with that work. It was about 3 years later, a friend of mine came up to me, and I hadn't seen him in a couple months. I said, "What's new?" And he said, "Well, I'm adopting 4 kids from Moldova." And I said, "Wow, that's going to be expensive, isn't it?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "That's going to cost about $60,000 or $70,000. And I asked him, I said, "Have you got any idea how you're going to pay for that?" And he said, "No." And I said, "I got an idea." And we got together next Saturday, and 2 hours later, we emerged with a plan. So long story short, we got about 13 guys. We all mailed letters out to everyone we knew. I found, asking them to sponsor us while we worked in this widow's house. I went and found a widow who needed some help, got all the supplies for that day donated, and we spent the day working on Miss Lucille's house. When it was all over, said and done with, we had raised right at about $55,000.
Marty Rowe is a Grammy winner and lead singer of the country band Diamond Rio. His passion for orphans and widows has led him to become a board member for Both Hands.
After a couple years of discussing this idea back and forth with JT on the deck and him getting a better picture of what he wanted to do, a good friend of his from church, Don Meyer, decided he was going to adopt. He thought that we could actually do this concept of working on a widow's house and using that as the fundraiser. During that time, I think one of the things that really convicted him was that he was in his backyard spending time in the scripture, and he was reading in James, and James 1:27 came out to him, which speaks about religion, the purest form of religion being helping widows and orphans in their distress. That just seemed and has become actually our theme verse in Both Hands. It was just an affirmation of the idea that we could do both at the same time, and that both of those things are as pure a form of Christ-like ministry as you could come upon.
Every project starts with an adoptive family who wants to adopt. And what they do is they recruit their friends. And that family and their friends are the team. And the team sends letters out to people saying, sponsor us while we work in this widow's house. What I do is I help a family organize a team. I also help a family figure out how to find a widow in their community. And once they find a widow, someone who needs help, they make a visit with the widow's house and take an inventory and things like that. They'll go around to different merchants in the community and say, would you like to donate?
Both Hands for me is as grassroots, as hands-on as our faith, I think, can actually be. And when we say both hands, that's really what it is. We get our hands dirty. We spend the day working, doing whatever it takes to help a widow. Just that's the down and dirty of it.
Widow Frances Lee knows the heartache of losing a loved one.
My husband and I were building our own house, and we got, I guess, probably 3/4 of the way finished, and he just got really tired and could not continue working. It ended up being lung cancer. At that point, everything on the house stopped. You know, it was taking care of him. So after he died, I believed that I was going to be able to go ahead and continue, getting things finished up at the house, and I was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Through the help of both hands, she is now on the path to a better life.
They amazed me in that people started coming to this house and dropping off materials. They brought bifold doors, baseboards, and window framing. There were just so many little details that they took care of for me. Some of them had never swung a hammer or done anything like that, but they all worked, and it was amazing to watch the effort, how much fun they had, and the fact that they were doing this for me.
For J.T. Olson, helping orphans and widows has been a personal mission. It all started when he was a young child growing up in the Midwest.
1969, when I was in 7th grade. We lived on a farm in Iowa. And my mom and dad, they had 5 kids. I remember one weekend in particular, they had gone away to celebrate their 16th wedding anniversary. And all of us kids were kind of farmed out to different families and everything. And I remember coming back on a Saturday night. We were all kind of coming in, and I'd spent that day at a friend's house with my brother. We were playing in the barnyard, so I was kind of dirty. I had to go down into the basement. My brother went in the front door, and I went down into the basement. I can remember so clearly sitting down and unlacing my boots. I was bending over, and my brother came walking down the basement stairs. And I was excited. I looked up at him and said, "Are Mom and Dad home?" And he looked at me and he said, "Mom and Dad are dead." And I thought, "What?" And he said, "Mom and Dad are dead. They were killed in a car accident an hour ago." So I know what it feels like to be an orphan. I know what it feels like to have everything that you hold important, the things that kind of keep you tethered in life, kind of snipped, and you feel like floating. I know what it's like to have the feeling of wondering who's going to take care of us. I know what it's like to wake up the next morning and for the first minute think it was all just a dream, and then realize after about 60 seconds, no, I'm never going to see my mom and dad again this side of heaven. So I know what it's like to be an orphan, and I know how these kids feel, but I also know what it's like to be rescued. Because 3 months before the accident, my aunt and uncle, my mom's sister and her husband, had worked out an agreement with my mom and dad that if anything would happen to my mom and dad, they would take the kids, and vice versa. If anything would happen, then we'd take their kids. I had 2 sisters. One was 4 and one was 5 when the accident happened. They moved in with my aunt and uncle right away. But us 3 boys, we were 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, we stayed on the farm to finish the school year out. I remember getting off the bus, and it was on kind of a hill so you can see most of our farm from the bus stop. I got off the bus and I looked in our fields, and there were all our neighbors with their tractors and their plows and their discs and their planters. They were planting our crops. So I know what it's like to have your feet washed. I know what it's like to be blessed. And I know what it's like to be taken care of. And what I love about both hands, it gives people a chance to take care of people who need it. You rescue the orphan, but you also serve the widow. And I think what's interesting is my father had a sister who also moved in after the accident. She moved in on the farm. She was a widow. So you have the widow taking care of the orphans. And it's pretty neat when you think about it. Fast forward to 2003. I'm in the third floor of a high-rise hotel in China in a conference room where there's 23 screaming little Chinese babies, and there's an 18-month-old with black pigtails being handed over to me, kicking and screaming. I can't imagine life without my Gracie, the little 9-year-old who sleeps across the hall from me now.
For married couple Clint and CJ Redwine, adopting a child overseas had always been a dream. But with the costs of adopting in the tens of thousands of dollars, they knew it would be a struggle. With the assistance of both hands, their 5-year journey became a reality.
It's amazing the faith that these families have, and it's indescribable the joy that we all feel when that child actually comes home.
Every time we can help a family raise $5, $10, $15, or $20,000 that gets them that much closer, that much quicker to rescuing their son or daughter, that's living.
Warfare, disease, and poverty change lives. With your support of both hands, you will too.